So in tech, we have in the network about 400 or so. Those who are really dedicated at the core of what they do, they have technology embedded in everything they do, and or they're shaping the way technology, they want to shape the way technology is built for everyone. Within that, what we see is that social entrepreneurs bring two very specific perspectives that are very valuable. One is they act as an early warning system. Because they're working with communities, they understand very quickly, what does it mean when an AI or an algorithm is biased? How does it affect the people that I'm working with on a daily basis? And what can we do about it? The second piece is incredibly important. It's not just about finding the problems and saying, oh, this is an issue. The second piece is they are also innovating. They are finding solutions for these new challenges as they emerge. So it's an early warning system, but it's also an early response system, right? So these are the things that make social entrepreneurs very relevant in this space. AI is moving very rapidly. It's very exciting. There are big questions also that none of us have answers for yet. And looking to social entrepreneurs can give us some clues as to where to go, where to look. All of you in this room play this role, right? So in terms of just a few, I'm just going to say a couple things, the rest will come in the conversation. But one thing that is, I think, very important that social entrepreneurs do day in and day out when they use technology is they figure out how can I unleash people's agency with this solution. It's not about them being a user passively kind of benefiting from a particular solution that this technology might bring. It's about how can the technology itself unleash their creativity, give them power they didn't have before, distribute that power more equally. That's one. The other piece is, very often, there is a long-term focus. So not just looking at the impact that this will have today, but also thinking about the unintended consequences long-term. I'll come back to this when we go through some examples. And the third, there's more, but the third is because they're so focused on the community, they're thinking about how can this technology-enabled solution share benefits. So let's say they're aggregating a lot of data for a specific purpose, to run a specific algorithm that will help find new cures for rare genetic diseases. Is there a way, the social entrepreneur will often ask, is there a way for the data that I'm gathering, the health data that I'm gathering, to ultimately not just help find new cures, but also compensate the users for the contributions that they're making to the database, right? So sharing of benefits, sharing of burdens as well. I'll stop here.
And one thing I want to just, for many of the students in the room, one thing I want to pull out from what she said is that you realize that whenever a technology is created, it is huge in terms of when it goes into people's hands, when it goes inside communities. So you might say, I have not committed a crime, I just made this thing, it's useful. But when it's a really powerful technology, then it has huge implications at every level. It's like mobile phones today, right? Mobile phone creators would say, we were just thinking about whether it has radiation or something, but now people are saying, but what about isolation? What about depression? What about eye damage? What about the teenagers getting addicted to certain types of content? Oh, that's not our thing. I mean, how is that our responsibility, So I think one of the things that social entrepreneurs are always bringing is that no, you have to look at it from a full system point of view. You have to see the entire picture. And sometimes it can look difficult, because you feel like, I can't see the whole picture, I'm just in my hostel dorm or I'm just out making something. But you have to, along with other people, try to see that whole picture. Especially if it's a really powerful technology. So, I hope I didn't contort something you said, but I think that's why it's really important that the leading social innovators are engaged, because they are already used to looking at the whole picture rather than product mara maine. Right? Deepak?
Right. Thank you for the opportunity. I represent makers like yourself. My day job is to build AI systems. The joke I make is, until November, it was hard to tell people what I do. And then ChatGPT came along and said, what do? You do ChatGPT. It's like it's very, I feel very bad to have been narrowed my life down to one word, but compared to not being able to tell people, yes, I do ChatGPT, like something like that. It's good enough for me. So I'm here to say that I have experience in doing AI responsibly. Microsoft has these responsible AI principles. I built a product in compliance with those responsible AI principles. I did not enjoy that experience one bit. It was hard. It was very, very, very hard. Almost felt like we were screwing up one thing or the other every day. But we persisted, we got through it, we shipped the product. The product was very successful. The users gave us great feedback, and that gave me confidence that it can be done. So I'm here to tell you it can be done. I represent the tech that creates that AI. Not all tech is that mindful. Some tech companies are. Some tech companies have AI principles, responsible AI principles. Others don't have it, but it can be done. At Microsoft, I also had a very good culture. Culture is very important. If I index on that word culture again and again, because that's one thing I've learned. I'm going to say something very sophisticated and very intelligent seeming. It's not me, it's somebody else's words. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. You can have this fantastic strategy, you can go to these offsites and really nice PowerPoints and group hugs and say, we'll have a strategy for data, we'll have strategy for this. But you have a culture that doesn't facilitate failures, that doesn't pat you on the back to say, okay, you failed, but what did you learn? Strategy is not going to do anything for you. And that's what I'm very grateful for, because they let us fail. Oh, we failed many times. Like many, every single day was one failure or the other, but Microsoft sort of let us fail. So, 3 things I like to say. A, you must have responsible AI guidelines. Microsoft had some, they built it, they made them based on their truths, their realities. For example, I was telling Sachin the other day, accountability is a key principle for an AI maker, because they must be accountable for what it's doing. It may not be relevant as a principle for legal tech. Your realities you know better. But the community come together and decide what responsible AI principles you guys should abide by. You decide that. Okay. Then what? Then you implement it. Then every single part of the AI lifecycle, data collection, data training, data annotation, model building, model evaluation, all that, you must show compliance with each of those principles. Accountability, fairness, explainability, whatever that is. That is you showing compliance. You'll not get 10 out of 10. You'll make mistakes. But have that culture of saying, okay, yes, we were not 9 out of 10. We were not 7 out of 10. But you had to ship something. Like I've almost felt like Microsoft, like there was a gun on my head on the left side saying ship it, ship it, ship it. And the right side was like compliant, compliant, compliant. I was like, I can't do both. Then I'll never do anything. But we did something. The third thing is, you must do it. Responsible AI cannot be an afterthought. I've coached so many startups that said, what if you cut corners? The good thing about AI is that it's getting so much exposure. The bad thing is that if you later find out you screwed up, you're going to get a lot of litigation. You're going to get a lot of trouble. OpenAI, if you know now, is now getting sued for whose data did you collect to make your AI. They must have thought of that before. I mean, it's not rocket science. Anybody who does AI knows this. You need data. Whose permission did you use it? I wrote a very bad piece of poetry. It's horrible, but it's there in ChatGPT. I don't want that to live there. I don't want that to be associated with my name, right? So like you must have done something good and interesting. Why should it be part of it? Nobody asked your permission, did they? So it must be done. RAI should be the first thing you think of when you build any AI system, and I'm here to tell you it can be done. Yes, it's intimidating. Yes, it's hard. You're not going to figure out every single no answer. You're not going to get 10 out of 10. But I'm going to talk about why it must be done later on, because that I think is the core idea I bring to. But it is urgent, it is important, and it must be done. We're already too late. In my mind, we're too late, but it's good that we are having that conversation.
Thank you, Deepak. And from a bunch of things that he said, which were really valuable, one thing I want to extract is, for a lot of us, there is a fear that we'll do something and that will come back to bite us. It will be really like criticized because of something. I think some of it is inevitable. And the really important thing is to be really committed, to be as diligent as possible, but know you're going to make mistakes and you have to respond fast and fix them and build systems. So whenever I speak to all of you, I actually sometimes have this bipolar feeling. One is people who are rushing to make something and put it out and really excited and not bothered at all, which is also a kind of a great thing to kind of make something really fast. And on the other side, people who are not wanting to finish making it or to put it out because they're terrified that my reputation will get affected by a mistake that we made, by some unexpected thing in which it was used. Both are things that have to be managed in this domain. So when I'm playing back from what you said is the failures will happen, and then how you respond to them will be important, and the community will be important. So you can reach out and learn from them. So with that being said, let's dive into looking at situations and actually responding to them. I'm going to invite Rushul. Rushul, can you talk a little bit about Bandhu? And Bandhu is a very interesting initiative that Rushul is the founder of. And if you can do it at two levels. One is a quick explanation of what Bandhu does, and second is how Bandhu proposes to use AI, the solution you are developing. If you can just put that out as a problem statement for us, let's then all talk about what are the potential challenges and what are the potential approaches as a community looking at that and tapping into this great experience. Over to you, Rushul.
Yeah, thanks. Also, you're opening myself up to litigation here with.
So there are lots of people to defend you also. It's fine.
So Bandhu is a tech platform that connects migrants and blue-collar workers to bundles of jobs and affordable housing. So effectively trying to...
Can you hear him clearly at the back? Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, tech for migrants to access jobs and bundles of jobs and affordable rental housing. And on the second piece of it, since this is the first times that these houses, informal houses and landlords and tenants are digitizing, all those rental cash flows are something we are securitizing to get them access to credit. So there are two parts to this. In terms of how we do this, well, a lot of what we do manually currently could in the future start to become AI. For example, how do we identify what communities to intervene in? So there's a mix of satellite imagery that we kind of know how to read because we've been in the urban sector for some number of years. Simple proxy, if you look at blue roofs, it's either a tarpaulin or an industrial area. It's a very good proxy for what is a low income area where what kind of jobs might be. That's just one example. So one is identifying where do we intervene, who are the kind of people, and then we start onboarding supply of informal housing or low income housing. And this is done by women in communities, typically wives of industrial workers who have some access to literacy and tech. They go around on board, of course, photographs, videos, a lot of granular information, whether there's a toilet or not. They will even ask if a tenant comes here, will they have to pay their electricity bill as per the meter? That's again a proxy for, is there a metered connection? That means, is it proof of some kind of regulatory visibility into this place? While that's on the supply side, on the demand side, what we do is, of course, until now, we had a WhatsApp chatbot, we had an app that is accessible through NGO centers, through directly typing in, which essentially helped a potential migrant or a tenant to find all the possible rooms that could fit their profile. Now, when I say profile, we of course faced with the realities of India's social construct. Some sorts of people don't like to live like with other sorts of people. They don't like their names. They don't like their food habits. And of course, as a platform, you can't discriminate. So you start putting in certain proxy questions. But also think of it, if I have a certain name and I like the house for all it that is, and I keep applying for many such houses and I have a rejection rate of 90%, how am I going to feel as an individual from that community? So these are things that we of course have to control in a very simplified way for now. Of course, AI could transform this, but again comes with risks because we have a lot of PII, a lot of that kind of data. And government doesn't have access to any of this on housing. So that's the piece. And what we've recently integrated for the last month is, of course, Jugalbandi, which made it very simple because now in at least 4 well-functioning languages, people can send a voice note and instantly get access to what kind of rooms they can occupy. So I hope this is one kind of overall contour of how we implement and the potential data play. So AI I see in two terms. One,
Baruchel, can I just, can you give an example of a person coming to a destination? I know Kerala gets a lot of migrants as well, I believe. Which states do they come from predominantly here? West Bengal? A lot of people come from West Bengal. So can you just, because I think there are many students here as well, maybe what you can do is give an example of somebody and what would their interaction experience be? I mean, that might help.
yeah. So I mean, there was this case we done, Odisha to Kerala, it was actually a migration we attempted. Now think if you have a farm, you're in Odisha, there's a certain season you are not able to cultivate. That's when there might be a local NGO operating around in your area. As of now, of course, if you have a WhatsApp-based phone, you can directly kind of put in an information that this is where I want to go and this is the kind of skill profile I have, and then help me get there. The other thing you could do is go to an NGO, one of our partner NGOs there, again log in, this is my name, this is how old I am, these are my skills, this is how long I've been working. This is how much I intend to send back home. Based on that, you start to see what are the opportunities there. You click on some of them, it'll start to tell you, okay, if you go with this employer, they are providing you this kind of a job, this is where you're going to live, there are photographs and those sorts of things with it. So this is if a migrant is stepping out of their village. If you are someone, now a lot of people don't take tech as the basis to do this. They are more comfortable following some group of friends or a contractor that they know. So in that case, they will land up in the city, make their first early arrangements, but then in a month or so, they'll figure out I need something better. At that point, again, they either access the chatbot, then again they plug in information, or including if I'm looking to find a house, I will say, age, gender, name, are we a group of men, are we a family, how many of us are going to inhabit this place, what kind of arrangements are we okay with, are we looking for a attached toilet or not, those kinds of things. Are we okay with taking the risk of paying the electricity as per the bill, or we just want a fixed amount, right? There are lots of small metrics that I step into, because based on that it will populate. So while the Android app will give you listings that you click apply for, and that application goes to the other side, be it an employer or a landlord. And based on your profile, which is basically your name, as of now your name is revealed, the other things are matched from the back end. Based on your name, they may choose to entertain that conversation or not. If they do entertain that conversation, they'll call you up and then try and close that later. If you go through the WhatsApp bot, of course you again get a similar process where then there is a human intervention, where at some point one of our team members will participate in trying to close that transaction.
Yeah. And I presume that when if you're using AI for this, like say for instance, if you're using AI to kind of curate a set of likely connects, I presume you're making some choices, right? That based on this, here is the likely things that would be there. And the other thing you're doing is you're probably taking in a lot of pretty sensitive information also from them on who they are, where they come from, whether they are children, all of those things, to kind of do some matching at your end and then curate. You're doing both those things, right?
Yeah.
You're doing that. Okay, got it. And so any one or two questions on the solution itself before we dive into what are the potential questions that come up here from the responsible AI side? Or just good to dive in? Okay, thank you, Rishu. Thank you. So, would invite anyone to jump in.
So, I think one of the first questions that comes to mind for me, given the amount of data that you have and the population also that you're working with, which of course I'm not from here, so there's a lot of context that I don't understand, so that's the first disclaimer. Forgive me for that. But I imagine that there are some big questions around bias that you've had to figure out, right? How do you ensure that whatever system you put together doesn't reinforce biases that are already in society, right? And you know, I'd be curious maybe to hear from you, what did you do or what are you thinking through in order to ensure that what you're trying to do, which is serve a population that needs a lot of access to housing and credit, as you said, and all of that, doesn't get worse off through the intervention that you're doing. I'm sure you've taken some precautions.
And the most obvious thing is India's social divides, caste, religion, etc., etc. So we had to figure out, because we legally can't ask people these things, we don't collect that information. So we had to use proxies. One very obvious one was dietary habits. That is generally a very good proxy. So those kind of properties or those kinds of tenants wouldn't just show up. They wouldn't find each other. They don't exist. They're in separate worlds. Now, of course, it's a bias, right? That based on food preference, we are creating.
You exclude some choices because you know that's not going to work.
Yes.
Or you presume that's not going to work.
Yes. But we also know there are lots of things that work very well. For example, their tehsil or their sub-district or district, and the taluka tehsil. Similar language, so again we collect information on what languages you know, what's the first language. So based on that tehsil data, whether they're adjacent tehsils, what languages they speak, what's the kind of age profile, this is a great fit. But as of now, we don't try and push a bias there. We allow them to connect to each other and they figure it out. Of course, we understand this worked well. We've also had, I think because we've allowed that flexibility, we've been thrown up with some very good surprises. So this was a case of 5 industrial workers, boys, who get the worst of conditions for, these are where there's open sewage and they are living in the middle of sheds which are just constructed, the sewage flowing through it, there's a toilet. Yeah. So this was the worst of kind of conditions you could find, and these 5 boys could never imagine that they could get a formal, affordable room in the vicinity. But because of the app, they were like, okay, this exists. And for some reason, unfortunately, the landlord said, okay, yeah, we are happy to have them. But this was typically an area where they wouldn't allow anything other than families. And when I say families, groups of single young men are seen as a nuisance by a lot of groups because they'll be like, they'll get drunk and they'll harass the women. And these are social kind of presumptions. And they, of course, they will discriminate. So our platform allowed people to break that because there was one so-called bad actor and from our perspective a good actor in the community. So yeah, it works both ways, but this learning helps. And now of course we're trying to profile what made that actor deviate from the community profile. So as of now there's no AI built in there, but yeah.
So just playing back my implementer's perspective, I'm a PM. A designer friend will tell you I shouldn't solution, but I'm solutioning. May the PM gods be happy with me. So what I would ask is, first let's figure out who is your stakeholder system, meaning your tenant, your landlord. Are they all? Could there be someone else? Financing, banking, whatever. Right? Let's figure out all the stakeholders, right? And let them give them a name and a persona and say, okay. Then there'll be something like someone like a primary stakeholder, meaning we must at all times benefit this. Then it's secondary, tertiary. You can't, everything can't be primary. Everything can't be critical, everything can't be important and urgent all the time. You must always choose one thing that we will always do right by. Once you do that. Then, so in that sense, have you mapped out your stakeholder community?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll split number 2. One is the matching, one is the credit.
Okay.
Matching, supply of housing is the biggest problem. So the landlord, who's typically a migrant who's been around for 12 to 15 years, is not local, but someone who could acquire in some form at least access or a kabza or right to occupy that property. So that person has to be on the platform, that person has to be sticky. The second is the women agents in the community, because they facilitated a lot of the things that we don't understand or don't yet have clarity on. So they're the second most important people. And the third is of course the tenant. Now the tenant is relatively more flexible because opportunities can be different. So, but in the long term, the tenant is the one who's going to start to make this financially sustainable. So that.
And I like that because I also like the nuance you said that religion, coming from a Western mindset, RAG as we call it, race, age, gender, are the 3 things we immediately think of. We don't typically go beyond that. Now you're bringing out a nuance of religion, maybe education and income. Now, as an AI, I would like you to capture all of them because I can, weave beautiful models out of it and tell you how amazingly well it does. And the more data you give me, I can weave beautiful narratives and all that. But when you tell me it's a modem for discrimination, I'm immediately thinking, damn, like 3 variables gone, the models are not going to be as useful, then what's the point of AI? But that's your reality. I can't come and prophesize that thou must capture all those details. Okay, so that's good. Second thing is, when you go about building it, I encourage you and others I'm going to be talking to today to think about at least 2 things explicitly. One is how to benefit. Like, how will we benefit all these stakeholders? And you can pick a hierarchy, the primary, the secondary and tertiary. Next thing is, again, explicitly think about how shall I, what do you say, I don't know what the Indian word for is, non-maleficence, meaning how shall I not harm while benefiting. Now why am I calling it out? You can cause it both sides of the same coin, but it's not actually. You stating it out explicitly, putting it on the wall and saying, while I am doing this, am I harming somebody? Then I won't do it. You might end up doing less. I get it. But being mindful of these things will help you in the broad run to say, and I'm betting you this, the migrants, the people who are part of your system will actually admire you for your thoughtfulness later on. You will not get the engagement, the love and the lift you want to get and the adoption you want to get initially, but you being mindful, they'll come and tell you, and they'll tell you it's okay. Like, maybe we'll come and tell you it's okay not to be that mindful, because it's okay, because A, the system itself is rigged against me, B, you're trying to impose this artificial constraints on yourself, it's going to be hard, and then you can do this. So in that construct then, do you see these things as practicable? Can you see yourself thinking along the lines of how can I build AI systems that are giving these benefits to these people while at the same time not harming these things?
I think, harm to begin with. We started thinking of it from the first differentiation made on the food preference. Yeah, the first difference we made on the food preference, we were very concerned with how disappointed. I mean, if you ask someone who does not belong to like the most dominant community of an area, in the experience of trying to find a house, there are horror stories. And the first thing we wanted to take out was they don't have to go through that. So of course that is our presumption, but we're making them feel that, hey, I'm accepted. And there is enough inventory out there to. So, well, you could say there was an excellent property that they could have, but we've also taken the preference from the landlord side that we do not want people who eat. So, of course, I think that's something we reinforced in some sense, but I feel when you look at a cost benefit kind of an analysis, you say emotionally that's more important.
So just maybe we can take a couple more examples. One thing I want to tease out from this is very interesting is that 3 years down the line, Bandhu has done a great job of connecting people to parcels of work and property, affordable housing. But again, the challenge that it has gone along all the lines that are already accepted, all the caste lines, all the dietary lines, all everything, because that's how it works. And then therefore, Bandhu is actually taking away the power of the rogue agent who says, no, I'm okay with, despite the dietary issues, giving to this person, but you're not even recommending my thing. So I think what you called out is the unique challenge that as you build this based on the recommendations of the data that works, how do you actually design it so that you allow for people to deviate from the dietary lines, caste line, class line? So I think that's going to be an interesting challenge building and designing for that, rather than reducing it down to only one task, right? And there, I think, no harm being done. Who are the primary stakeholders? And designing there, rather than getting lost in efficiency completely, I think is a powerful principle. As we keep this, let me also, Kishore is here. Kishore, hi. Kishore, would you like to share what you're building? Because then, Kishore, we use your example of what you're building to talk about what are the challenges and think together with you on that.
So what we are trying to build, actually I'm a police officer. The biggest challenge that we see is no matter how much hard work that is put in, still people fear police. And the moment even a mom would threaten, if you don't eat, I'll call police. So that's the common man's image of police. So citizen and police interaction, being empathetic, very knowledgeable, and they empathizing the victim and interacting with the victim for police is the need of the hour. So we are trying to build a bot currently named as Disha, which is still we are prototyping. To better express what the bot does, I would like to borrow an example. Imagine a case of someone like Nirbhaya. She is a 11-year-old kid going to school. She is getting constant abusive messages and some mock pictures of hers on her mobile. Now almost every kid is using a mobile phone and many of them own it. And she is getting threatening messages saying that if you don't do what I ask, like making her share more real content by sending some mocked content, I'll circulate this to your mom, I'll tell this to your father. So the child, first of all, she is not in the age to even understand what is happening with her. And it is very difficult for her to reach out to her parents, trusted adults, and say this is what's happening to me. And going to police is far ahead. And the victim and several of the perpetrators who lie within the circle, they rally upon the same point. They know that victims will not speak out. We know several incidents where grown-up women are opening it up after they have reached certain stage, what happened at their childhood. So I think such cases will be abundant for police. What Disha app does is it opens up an interface, an anonymous interface where a child can reach out to and tell what is happening with her. She knows definitely that something is bad happening to her, but she doesn't understand what is assault. If you use big names like rape, etc., she will not understand all of that. She can come and tell this is what somebody is doing. And the immediate response in physical world is, if somebody goes to police or somebody goes to a teacher, I have known occasions where we are full of value judgments. We'll first start, what did you do? There are several people in the class, why he is messaging you? Whom did you give the phone number? What are you wearing? So this is what the bot will try to avoid. The bot will first respond in a way a trained counselor would do. It would tell, it's not your fault, what he is doing is wrong, and it also gives it the tips, first steps to do. Don't respond to the messages, and if it is on WhatsApp, etc., block it. And second crucial point from police is, lot of victims also in the fear they delete everything. So it also tells don't delete. Keep them with you. These are crucial evidence. It also tries to explain now ChatGPT kind of technologies are breaking down quantum physics, and they can actually explain quantum mechanics in like a 5-year-old to me. That's what the greatest feature that we can pitch into the Disha bot. The bot will explain what is happening with her, the legal principles in a very understandable manner, gives confidence to her. It also can explain why it is necessary to reach out to the police, because what is happening with you could be happening to many others as well. So this also falls under the prevention of crime from our part, and the evidence collection also gets better. And finally, it also, if she is not able to reach out to parents, there are several existing mechanisms, child protection officers, the local helplines, 1098. It will give out specific information based on her inputs, based on her consent. So this is what we try to do. I know there are several responsible AI questions comes in. I think I would want to give you your inputs first.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kishore. That's a very clear description of the problem statement and what you're seeking to do. And the fact that it raises a lot of responsible AI questions is what makes it really interesting, because you are wading into that tough territory, and that's where everybody needs to make with you. Let me bring it back to folks here. Who wants to engage with this?
I think you've already spoken to him. Let me go first. First of all, kudos for doing that. This is very hard. And here I am thinking my work was hard. And here you are doing what you're doing. So, tip of the hat to you. One thing I'll say is, it can be done. It can be done. You'll never have the right principle and you'll never have 100% compliance, but you need to think about it diligently. Couple of the things that come to mind is, okay, you'll benefit the person, no question about it. But actually, I'm worried about what more, like there's one thing that says, I am a victim and the world victimizes me even more. Right, which is the saddest part of being a victim, because then once I tell you I'm a victim, then I'm victim shamed and victim. It just sticks to you like a bad bot. So one thing I'm thinking is, what steps can you take that you shall not victimize the victim even more throughout the machine learning life cycle, which is, you take the data about the person, you predict some actions to take. How shall you not take that data and do nefarious things with it? For example, could there be a bad actor in your system who could get access to the data and victimize the person even more? How can you prevent that access? At the same time, how can you enable access to the right person at all times? Third thing is, with these, especially, with these AI systems, some systems are so black box, we can't explain it, neural networks. So I would highly encourage you not to use them. There are simpler machine learning models, decision trees and whatnot. Those are very explainable. You can sort of draw a line to say, data came like this and this happened and this happened. You understand it. You can go to higher level of abstractions afterwards, but initially you should be able to explain to yourself how it made this recommendation. I would pitch explainable AI solutions upfront. Third thing is data protection. No machine learning systems are built yet today where data encryption, data privacy is baked in. Data and privacy and encryption are all outside, machine learning is outside. That's sad. No ML systems exist without data. Data privacy, encryption can't be an afterthought. It must be together. Till those systems are built, you have to be mindful about those things. For example, where is the data coming from? Where is it stored? Who has access to it? What is the hygiene around it? In those kind of things. When the data is used for the model, who can access it? What decisions are made? Whose recommendations are made? And ask the same thing I asked him, because while it's very interesting, while I'm very excited that I can capture a lot more data and give very beautiful predictions, the data capturing itself is harmful. Like for example, it's a girl. Why do I need to know the caste, the age and the locality? Maybe I can argue that I can give better recommendations. For example, if there are registered child sex offenders in that area, I can prevent you from doing that. But the moral question you have is, if I did that, same thing, I'll benefit. But the act of storing that data, could it harm the child? It can't be an or. Yes, it means you start this whole beautiful thing of, I'll give these 100 benefits. By the time you get to that, you will only come to 20. Okay, be happy with 20. Remember, you're doing something fundamentally different that has not been done before. 20 is still amazing. 100 would be awesome, but you don't have guardrails on how to prevent misuse between 21 to 100, which is fine.
I think this point that Deepak made is a point I've seen in other systems also. For all his criticism, Aadhaar made a conscious choice not to save more than what it needed. There was a big discussion that no, we should collect 5-6 more data points. Finally, they decided not to take those data points, even though it seems in the future you could use it for other things. Consciously, they decided not to take that. I think this point is a really precious point, that even though it seems like you can get a better solution out by using A, B, C, D, what do you choose not to capture because you know that the potential implications could be. Deepak, thank you for that point.
I just want to add, I just want to add a couple of points which I've already shared with Kishore, but I think are useful for the room to hear and think about as well. One is also understanding what is your specific expertise that you're bringing into this, and understanding where the limits of the police officer, the police force is, versus what maybe civil society organizations that consistently every day work with women and girls in these situations. They'll have other insights than the ones that you do. So finding partners, who can complement what you know and do better than anyone else, with what they know and do better than anyone else. Finding the partners who will do this with you. It will make your solution more effective, and it will also bring trust. You know, you talked about the communities, they don't trust us, they fear us. This can help solve for that problem, and it's not just about police, it's general. The other pieces that these kind of more experts on the social spectrum will bring are things like, you know, what I brought to you in a conversation about, have you thought about the fact that this girl or this woman might be sharing their device with the person that they're trying to make a complaint about? How will you protect them? Is there a way that you can have an exit button that automatically erases the whole chat history? You know, are there technical solutions to that? And if there aren't, maybe then this technical solution you're thinking of is not appropriate and something else is needed. Right? Similarly, design decisions along the way. You know, we did a demo yesterday. The first demo, it's very early and you need to, you know, do the demo to understand what are going to be the challenges. This is part of the process. The demo was with a male voice. Even though you told me in the first time we spoke that it's very important to have more female police officers doing the intake. So you already know this, yeah? But sometimes when we're building quickly, we forget, and then the male voice comes in and is not going to be the thing that makes the user actually feel safe, right? So all of these decisions are very important, and also the partners who do this day in and day out with a different perspective can also bring this perspective and make your solution 10 times more powerful, 10 times safer.
So I like you saying that put some light bulbs in my head. This is why you should have people smarter than you around you, makes you smarter. Okay, two things I'll tell you. Diversity. I mean, the best practice I want to bring about. Tell you my own story. So the product we were building was recognizing human expressions and translating them onto a character. Have you had use the Animoji app on Apple, like a cat and dog, happy birthday, something like that? So the thing was, I do this thing and I sing happy birthday to you. So the AI understands my expression, takes my voice, put it onto a panda, and the premise is that my loved one will like the panda version of me more than the version that I am. Right? Very benevolent, very nice, pat on the back, you know, good job. Problem. When we started this journey, we didn't have enough women on the team. Like we were like 90% men, 10% women. The big challenge was we never understood women's faces. Like I have a mom, I have a sister, I have a wife. I do not have the lived experience of being a woman. I cannot like read a book and understand that in 18 months. So diversity actually had a cost for me. So what it meant to me was that I did not capture enough women's faces. I did not capture enough diversity of human faces, all the facial accessories women have, which meant that I had to pay $250,000 more, get more data, get it annotated better, differently, and wasted 3 months in doing that. Remember, there were 2 guns on my head all the time. Ship it, make it compliant. Now I bought another misery onto myself by not having a diverse team. So which means the best practice I'll suggest is whomever you're building the product for, that must be represented in your team. You cannot build a product for women and not have women on the team. Just cannot happen. Now, I wouldn't recommend you have a child on the team, but have somebody, proxy is a good word, have either a direct proxy or some proxy around it to build that, because they will bring their perspectives which you will not have because it's not a lived experience. First thing. Second thing I'll say, the way to think about where AI can be embedded is that think of the journey of the child. Like, what would the child want to have done after she says this? This is classic design thinking, right? And say, okay, let's say you take 5 children, what would a counselor do? What would a mother do? And also think about the worst experience, which is what a police would do. Value judgment. So you know what awesome looks like, the counselor and the mom, you know what worse looks like. Within these things, you can map out a journey that works most of the time for those children. Then you start thinking where AI can be embedded. For example, recognizing the child itself. Fantastic idea, right? You're verifying it's the child and nobody else. Immediately I can see a red flag that you can abuse it. Now you can map out to say there are 40 steps to resolution, which generally works across all children under abuse, and you can see that all 40 steps can be AI. Then go back to your thing. Can I benefit and not harm? When you do that judgment, you'll see, you know what? I'm confident that only 13 of them I can answer both questions reliably correctly. That is your signal. There you can put AI and be confident that I'm not screwing up. And that's the start. That's your MVP. You launch this. Then you start going back and saying, okay, can I put it in step number 14 and 15 and 29 and 30 and then go there. AI technologies keep emerging, more and more things will happen, better things will happen, you can do more and more. But purely as a non-RAI person, I would tell you all 40. I can make it sing and dance and tell a joke and solve everything right away. But no, it doesn't solve both problems. So go on that journey, figure out, ask the child where it goes, and only when you can verify to yourself that I can benefit and not harm at the same time, then only I will do it and slowly work your way up. That's what I would do.
I think another important element, again, we've spoken about this, but for the benefit of the room, is especially when you're working with children or people with different literacy levels, you cannot assume that people know as much about the technology as you do. This is very, very important. They may not even understand that they're speaking with something that is not a human. And this is very important for them to understand, because then it helps them contextualize the information they're getting and understand that, if they hear something that sounds a little weird, which this is something also to be very careful about. There are some very known risks with generative AI in particular, not just bias, but hallucinations, something, the bot telling you something that has nothing, no bearing on on the situation, or that is harmful. Something that you cannot predict would actually happen, so testing for that. But even if there are no hallucinations and the bias has been resolved, it's important for the user to understand and feel in control with the information they're receiving, understand what kind of input this is. This is not a person who has lived experience, who has empathy, who can feel things. And there are design ways to do that. There's disclaimers, of course. You can say at the very beginning and throughout the conversation, I am a bot. I'm not a human. Or this is a bot. I'm not even using the I. First person pronoun. There's also visual design. There's lots of people when they create bots, they have a cute cat, for example. You're not speaking to a person. It's a cat. It's not even a cat. It's an animation of a cat. So thinking through these questions and whether, just whether you're actually putting this first, understanding that your user has transparency over what is happening, what are they interacting with in this moment.
I think that's a really great point that was just made, which is that in this whole GPT revolution, we are actually really excited that it's almost like human. So therefore, there is a tendency to be like, no, here you're having a human interaction. Like it's talk, so it's you personify it massively. And actually what Hanae is saying is that actually is a recipe for disaster. Because we think that by personifying it, we are creating an intimate experience, intimate experience for the person. But actually we may end up sowing the seeds of destruction, because that person may think it's a person, the person using the bot may think it's a person and behave in a way they should not. Instead, can we still have empathy in the experience, but not misleading that it's a person? The empathy is in the way the machine interacts with you, not trying to pretend to be a person and therefore I understand because I'm also another human being. And I think that's a phenomenal point. I mean, the way you articulated it just came home much deeper to me when you made that point. So I just want to underline that a bit. Back, I think you were.
No, I think I want to turn it back to you to say, we've said a lot. You have the hard job of still going and doing it. All I can tell you is it can be done. Don't be intimidated. Seek help. So there's a Hindi poem I want to bring out here. Urdu sort of. So if you don't understand, please don't mind. It says, इस दुनिया में इतना गम है, इस दुनिया में इतना गम है, उस गम में मेरा कितना कम है. We feel that our pain is so hard, insurmountable, so hard, but there's actually a lot of pain in the world. And this experience of telling stories and explaining to each other is cathartic in the sense that it can be done. And this is the value of the community. You may not get the diverse team you can hire. You can always get a community that listens to you. They'll come and tell you. And I'm telling you this from my own perspective, what you're trying to do is very hard. We understand, we appreciate. I'm sure many hands will come together and help you out with this. Right? There are people with design background, myself and others. I'm in London, but this is important and hard enough to to solve for it. So leverage the power of the community. Have a culture of being open. Like tell yourself it's okay to fail. Like you tell yourself it's okay to not launch it immediately. Like okay, do the due diligence for 3 months and launch it well. Yes, some children might be harmed in that sense, but when it is there, you made every possible thought that you've done it the right way, and make sure when it launches well and it helps people. So yeah, the community is there too. That's all I'll say.
Thank you, Ira. And I think after that I'll come to you, Ashia, right?
I just wanted to ask a question also from a perspective of, like in this situation, right? There is a certain outcome that is hoped for, right, in the intervention. So it's not just like a counsel or something. So the hope is that it will lead the victim to do something, right? So how do you like imagine the possible outcomes and also understand the possible risks of saying do this now or do that now, right? Without fully understanding the context and sort of knowing what is the safe thing to do or the right thing to do.
So for that, I would go back and say, look at the 5 ways to solve the problem. What would the counselor do? What would the mother do? What would the police do? Right? He knows his reality the best. He can also look at the counselor and say, because of the bot, we will only enable 3 outcomes. Maybe there are 7, maybe there are 10 more, but they make a value judgment, 3 outcomes. What 3 outcomes? That person is held accountable, is put into jail, and is counseled. It's up to him to decide what he wants to do. But let the community decide that. For example, I don't know if this bot can be something which can say, based on this, we can go and arrest this person and put this case on him or her based on IPC this section. That would be very tangible, and that would what law would say. Maybe you don't want to go to that extent. Maybe you just want to identify the person and let law take its course, where you do your due diligence to say, has this person verifiably done this? How many times has he done this? Repeat offender, whatnot. So the machine learning can replicate that and say, like we say, it's an anomaly. That's the word we use. It's an anomaly. It's not a guaranteed break in the system. Let's say the system ends by saying this is an anomaly. You verify it and make sure it's a true positive, false positive, or it actually happened or not. Now, what are the risks with it? The same risks if a human would do it. Like, have we misidentified? Did we misidentify the person, or did we take something benign and make it like it could be a 12-year-old boy? Maybe they're fooling around. Now, what would a human do? Machine learning would still replicate that. Now, what are the risks? When you put a machine learning there, replace the human, the machine learning itself could be wrong. They could misidentify the 12-year-old boy as a 40-year-old man and go behind it. It's baked into, that's what it's for. That's when I would say that diligence of benefit and harm would help you in doing that. Hopefully that answers the question.
And also this is where the working with collaborators who actually work in the field becomes vital. Like they have probably gone through these issues so much, So I personally feel that if we can't have that diverse team, we have to do it through collaboration. Otherwise, we will make these mistakes at what the next step should be. But
Yeah, one more thing I would add is that it's very important to determine at which point you need human judgment to step in. Are there situations, a way the conversation is flowing, that is indicating that this is something that is now outside the realm of what this particular technology should be doing, and should therefore indicate, that's it, this is where my skills stop, and now here's somebody you need to speak to, this agent, this counselor, this person, and do the handoff. There's a possibility the girl or the woman will not do that, but understanding what are the limitations of the technology and not assuming that you have to go all the way to everything that the police officer might do because you want to create something more efficient, or you really want to help a girl. If it creates more harm, if it has the potential to create more harm, figure out the handoff to the human. So as someone who feels like an isolated voice that advocates responsible technology in an ecosystem which is primarily focused on 10 ways to optimize ChatGPT, 10 ways to use AI in a magnificent way, I would like to highlight a couple of things. Now, after listening to both these statements, I'm happy to take conversations on offline as well. There are lots of questions that pop up in my mind around data privacy, data security, bias, and representation. Two key points that both Hanae and Deepak have stressed upon, and I want to highlight. One is we cannot be a team of people who are harnessing technology for the benefit of a certain community or a group or an audience without having one representation of people from the affected communities and also diversity, as he mentioned. So you may not always be able to hire, like they said, a child in your team or an affected community in your team, but then are there any other methods of conducting discussions, doing tests of your product with affected communities to know how they actually perceive it? Second thing, anthropomorphizing, right? That's a big word, but the idea that the tech is not human has to be established over and over again, especially the case study around children being given psychological help. I think it goes without saying that we need to have counselors and psychologists advice on how to roll this product out, right? Because it's minors we're dealing with. They don't have the cognizance or the development to understand, or the self-determination to understand what is working for me and what is not. So when they're talking to the bot, and there are use cases available around Snapchat having integrated ChatGPT into their AI interface, which is actually leading to conversations that advise wrong things to minors. So how would there be safety mechanisms to ensure that the chatbot is not providing those kinds of answers? And once again stress that having counselors' advices on these things are necessary. This particular example reminds me of another app that I was having a discussion with in the startup community, that they're building. Again, the problem statement identified is mental health. Mental health is a problem, and yes, we're trying to provide solutions in many ways to that. But when you provide solutions for mental health, we often get carried away by the mesmerizing features of the technology, like Deepak kept stressing. The tech can do great things, the UI is great, the UX is great. But when somebody is feeling depressed or is in a state of depression or is considering suicide, and this particular app that I'm talking about was giving solutions for people who are considering suicide. One does not go after the technical features of the app or how magically it's working. There is a whole lot of interplay of what state of mind they are in before they get to use something like that. So those kinds of calls can only be taken by field experts, and to collaborate with field experts to create solutions is necessary. So I'll just conclude with the one main point I want to highlight is there are complicated problems, and then there are complex problems. Complicated problems like building a Boeing 707 or a Swiss watch or an app that delivers food could be done with a lot of permutations and combinations, a lot of challenges, but those solutions can be arrived at. Complex problems are things like the ecosystem, things like the human mind, things like how we develop, and these are things where you make one tweak in one corner and will have cascading effect on those things for years to come. Complex problems cannot be resolved in binary ways. I repeat that. Complex problems cannot be resolved in binary ways, and automation often, however promising, cannot resolve these problems. So we can only use technology to aid these problems or resolving these problems in human ways. But let's not approach it in the first sense with the objective of binary resolutions for complex problems, if that makes sense. Happy to take the discussions offline.
So then I just conclude my bit and he'll have Hanae, right? So I'll conclude with a few thoughts, and I wanted to say this upfront, but I think it makes sense now. So you're all students, you're all makers, you are the future, you are the present. What you're going to do is going to shape a lot of these things. You're going to go into the workplace, you're going to come and engage, you're going to be part of it. So it's important that you both brought together, make use of this, be curious and learn and ask. Now, I build AI and I'm very paranoid about it. I am very, very, very paranoid. I think we're going to screw it up massively. Why? So look at how humans have evolved. Yeah? The way humans have evolved is through the ability to make mistakes and learn from them. For example, I know this is a piece of fire. I shouldn't touch it, I'll get harmed. How do I learn it? I will go touch it. I will learn from that only. Unfortunately, this is how humans have evolved. In machine learning, we call it reinforcement learning. We learn through reinforcement, we learn through that. Right? And reinforcement learning is just replicating how humans have learned. My worry is AI is so disruptive. If we make that mistake, there's no turnaround time. First thing. Second thing. Let's look at what makes us human. 3 things make us human. The ability to do, the ability to think, the ability to feel. So there's a slide I wanted to share later on where I talk about how over humanity's evolution we have replaced each thing. Manufacturing replaced the ability to do. But the scale of disruption was about 100 to 100 humans. Not more than that, right? So it was a major shift in how we evolved, but the scale was not that high. Let's look at the ability to think. Software and AI have disrupted that even more. That has now replaced up to hundreds of thousands of jobs. There's the last bastion of humanness called feeling, which I thought I would never ever be in an audience and talk about it. Unfortunately, people feel ChatGPT feels you. I'll give you a real example. I met a middle-aged woman in London. She's Chinese. She's taking dating advice from ChatGPT. Now, technically, I know that you're smiling, but technically, I know ChatGPT is the most sophisticated, high-memory parrot I can think of. Why? I'll ask you a question. Has anyone here come across a problem you think no one in humanity has had before? Has anyone here come across a problem you think no one in humanity has had before? I challenge you not. If you are, you're God. What it means is we are all derived by the same 9 emotions: lust, love, anger, which means it's a closed-ended problem. We're always going to be in that phase of anger and madness and love and lust and happiness. We're always going to be derived by that, which means any question you ask ChatGPT today, somebody would have asked that question sometime in the past. So it's only regurgitating that answer it gave that person. You were smart enough to ask your prompt in a certain way, it gave you better answer. But if you poorly frame the question, it gave you poor answer. Which means, for the uninitiated, it might look like it's empathizing, it might look like it's feeling, it is only parroting. That worries me. Because the moment you've hacked empathy, the moment you hacked intimacy, then the scale is now hundreds of millions of people. I never thought there could be a day like this that comes that AI could feel like it's empathizing with people. That day has come now. I don't blame that woman. You know what she said? As you know you're not doing right? ChatGPT is not, you know what she said? I feel safer asking a bot than a man. That's telling. That's terrible. She's like, as a man, I'm offended by to say like a whole human being you're replacing by with an inanimate object. But that's her life experience. I can't deny that. Men must have treated her badly enough to the point where she's go to that point. This is why I feel AI is at that juncture where if you don't do it responsibly, you can screw it up badly. There are other technical advancements in AI that are coming up, cryptography, quantum computing and all that, which is going to make it even more harder, even more disruptive. Right? So I see Hanae the other day, we see the tsunami coming. But it can be done. It can be done, it must be done, and very, very, very few people are making decisions on our behalf. ChatGPT, everything was done in Silicon Valley by a group of men. Yes, there are women involved, but not enough. But we must demand more. We must demand better. You must ask for more. You must say, I will only accept products that are built with responsible AI principles. I should demand that. You should demand that. You should ask for it. Why? Who else will? Most of the people, you are not in the room. The light bulbs were invented, trains were invented, chairs were invented. Women were not even in the room, they were not even considered worthy of being asked a question for. Decisions have been made on their behalf. I mean, what harm could a chair do, right? AI can do that harm much more. Yes, it can benefit. I love the work of AI and it helps me immensely be successful, but it can create more harm. So this is very important conversation we are having. It's intimidating, it's hard, but you must have the conversation. You must demand more. You must ask more. You must say it should be done. Campaign, active, be in the room, go into these rooms, ask these hard questions, demand more, because it can be done. Hanae?
Thank you. You've said a lot, so I don't have that much to add except to say that there are many principles out there. What is more difficult is to translate them into practice, and this is where all of us come in, right? There are no silver bullets. Nobody has all the answers. If you're trying to solve a problem, whatever the problem is, there are going to be social repercussions. All of us have to build out this framework for what responsible looks like in practice. And if you have an experience, share it. Share it with each other. Share it with other people who can distribute that learning. We need to be the ones who build it. Like you said, OpenAI and other big technologies are being developed in Silicon Valley. They're not going to come up with a solution for Kishore's challenge. It's not going to come from there. It has to come from us. So this is maybe the most important call to action, is that this is not the work of philosophers and thinkers in universities or only people in boardrooms in Silicon Valley who are trying to figure out how am I going to protect myself from a lawsuit. It's all of our job.
Yeah, thank you for calling that out, because when I sit and listen, one bias that I've been applying since the beginning of this conversation is, okay, what does this mean for me right now? If I have to solve a problem, what does that mean? And one thing I heard in this last conversation which was so potent was that given that AI can pretend that it's listening and empathizing in a human way, that it's somehow respecting your feelings, and given that is very that is how to be mindful that that's the game we are playing, we have to be very careful. Maybe that's not something we should be doing at all. But I think there's thinking to be done there. And if it's going beyond dry provision of information, मैं यहाँ हूँ, मुझे यहाँ जाना है, I need this, I need that, versus this is how I'm feeling. What do I do? So I think that the way I interpret this is to say, okay, now we can all learn as makers. These are different principles for us. And I don't think that the book on this has been written, right? Like, that's the problem. I'm sure many of us have been reading some of the stuff that's been coming out. I read one book called Ethical Machines, very nicely written book, but primarily focusing on transparency and bias and the classic things. But the whole thing of feeling and anthropomorphic thinking and all that's not touched, because there's too much there. This is going to come from us, and the question becomes, how do we share our learnings in micro situations? And that's something we all have to solve as a community. We have to figure out mechanism, maybe meeting more often, maybe Slack channels, I don't know, but mechanisms where we say, I'm building this, I came across this challenge and we thought a lot about this, and this is how we're approaching it. And somebody is saying, hey, have you thought of that? That's not happening. That's very ad hoc right now. So if I'm a policy researcher or I write a paper on a theory and I'm away from the maker, and the maker then actually says, I didn't know this anyway, but no one is translating this into reality for me. So if I'm an innovator sitting somewhere and making it, I'm messed up anyway. I don't know what to do because no one's helping me reduce it into reality. Isko karna kaise hai? So I would just say that somehow it's on us to blend those worlds. The maker world, the researcher, the grassroots experience, the social scientist, somehow we have to blend that so that we can come out with a better playbook. And some of that work has to be done for us.
One thing I forgot to say, you shouldn't think that only AI should be responsible. I hope that's not what you're saying. Everything you should be responsible. Finance should be responsible. Legal should be manufacturing should be responsible. The only big deal about AI is that the scale of disruption is not that high. If you screw up in finance, you're not going to affect hundreds of millions of people as much as AI can. I work in finance. I don't understand how stock market works. I don't understand how cryptocurrency works, how this price goes up and down. If I don't understand that, what is the scale of disruption? People who invest in stock will lose money. Not everybody, right? So everything must be responsible. The reason AI should be responsible more than others is because the scale of disruption, the scale of impact is much higher. Much, much, much higher than anything. I mean, think about Facebook, right? What I did in Hubli in my hometown, nobody gave a damn about because who cares about that? Now a cat rolls in Hubli, I know in London. Social network has amplified every way possible. You turbocharge it with AI, one fake thing, like Hanae was saying, you can make a fake video. You can't even believe what you see now. Who would have thought that could happen? That is why everything should be responsible. Legal should be responsible, finance, manufacturing, whatever you should be responsible. But the scale of impact is much higher in AI. That is why it must be. Even my own lived experience now, because of my experience with responsible AI, I have now made a conscious choice not to work for companies that do drugs, weapons. Why? I've learned that now. That has changed me. So it must change you in some way. What is that point of the knowledge that has not changed you? Then it's just knowledge in a book. वो विद्या कैसी जो काम में ना आए. So everything I do is responsible. I'm not responsible all the time. I can't be that minute, but it's become a now a habit. Now the investments I make, zero, wherever I think, oh, are they responsible? Who are those founders? Where did they get the money from? Like, where am I doing the choice? Okay, I buy something. I think of those things. Why? Because it's become a habit now. Then what happens is, when you're that mindful, when you're that deliberate about these things, you make less mistakes. You can't overnight change evolution to say every human being after 2024 will not learn through reinforcement. Can't go and switch on that light. It will happen. But being responsible, you make less mistakes. You're deliberate about it. So don't take away that we're harping that only AI must be responsible, everything must be responsible. It's just that AI's scale of impact is much higher, and hence the need for making it responsible is higher. That's one thing I would say.
Let's end with the audience if there's somebody who will there want to say. Maybe we are at times, maybe we can end with.
Sure, hi. By the way, this has been a pretty fantastic discussion. My name is Shubho, I'm from Samita. We're a social enterprise. I just wanted to say one thing, which is, look, there's a pretty interesting opportunity because if you look at the global south and India in particular, we have 1.2 billion people. Since the models are powered by data, and we have 80% mobile penetration, we have 16 languages that are online, what we do here matters. So unlike the past, right, because bulbs weren't invented here, electricity wasn't quite invented here, but the zero was. So we have an actual opportunity to change the trajectory of how AI develops by the use cases we develop, by the data policies we put in place, and by what we do in this room and elsewhere.
I think so. I think that's a great point because even the first few use cases, like say what Kishore is doing, Kishore is not just your solution. The way you approach it will trigger a whole generation of thinking around how do you
exactly and diversity of data, right? How that data is protected. Data will become a pretty important asset, and we have 1 billion people generating lots of data, right? So I just food for thought. This is not one where you have to be in the back seat or see the train moving out of the station. We can create our own rail network, and that will have a significant impact on how AI works.
Making it sound like this is a pain, but it's an opportunity. Every single developer I worked with during that 18 months did not like it. But when we launched it, they were immediately converted. They are demanding better. If you're building an AI product, women must be on the team. We can't replace them. We will not build AI. Now, they are very smart. They've shipped a product with 2-3 million people. Who would deny them? They are worth in gold. Why? They have shipped responsibly. Their weight matters now. 50% women, 50% men. Otherwise, we're not building AI. Now, same thing I'm saying. In my team now, building AI, which is sensitive, diversity is first. Diversity in race, age, gender. If you don't have race, age, gender, I'm not building anything. Why? I'm not going to bear the cost of headache and doing that all over again. So I'm demanding better. So you're right. Let's not take this as a problem. Let's take it as an opportunity. Let's take the conversation to say, now that we know, let's use that and build better systems because India is setting the way. And Saurabh was making a point. Nobody is doing legal LLM. Nobody is doing legal AI right now. We are. Let's take the opportunity. And unless I had gotten in touch with Agami and everybody, I didn't even know legal AI was a thing. Because my head is always medtech and finance and everything. You know, it's a thing. It's not to the stage where the world is, but you are taking steps there. So what you are doing are baby steps where the world will follow. Think of yourself as the Newtons of the world on whose shoulders others will stand and peek into the world. Have that gravity and build it with hope. Thank you.
Can I have one more? Sorry. I just thank you so much for the wonderful session. But I just want to add one more point with regard to data privacy. I was a data privacy lawyer, and one of the most important aspects that I figured, especially with, I mean, I'm pretty sure that JP has got probably an excellent work, especially the data privacy protection, GDPR compliance and all. But there's a common misconception, especially for when it comes to India, that since we don't have as of now, a strong data protection regime, it's an upcoming bill coming up. You don't have to go for GDPR compliance. But please ensure that starting from collection of data, training of data, you are GDPR compliant, because data subjects' rights are like sacrosanct. You have to be compliant with the same. As of now, AI is one area where, like, as everybody knows, like you have to protect data integrity. Where you collect from data, you have to expose them, transparency principles. Even though we don't have a clear data protection law as of such, the GDPR principles, the basic principles like transparency, data subjects' rights are sacrosanct. You try to be as compliant as possible, because right now the kind of people that you're dealing with may not know about what's happening behind it, but it will, because we have a task force, APDP task force with regard to ChatGPT. This is going to be widespread probably within 1 year. So please be compliant with this, because the costs are higher if you don't.
I'm sure this is going to continue and break out into lots of groups. All the best. Thank you.